Pittsburgh working on an extension for Big Ben. But who's under more pressure this year, Stephen A? Would you say it's Roethlisberger or Tomlin?
I'm going to say it's Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's won 65% of his games as a head coach in the NFL. I love the guy personally. I love the fact that he represents Steeler Nation the way that he does. But last season was a bad year. And it wasn't because of record. It wasn't because you started off 7-2-1 and then you ended up going 4-6 in your last 6 games or so. It wasn't because of that. Mm-hmm. It's because of the dysfunctionality that raked through the franchise, from Le'Veon Bell holding out for the season to the offensive line religiously calling him out initially, to Antonio Brown having issues, ultimately wanting his money. Of course, that was money related, but still having issues on the sidelines, to him going AWOL on the team at the end of the season against Cincinnati, to Big Ben Roethlisberger going on his weekly talk show talking about teammates, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many things that transpire with the Steelers that people can use as fodder to point to leadership or lack thereof, that ultimately becomes a reflection on the head coach, whether it's fair or not.
No.
And that's why I think that's the case.
You're wrong about this. The answer is Ben Roethlisberger. And the reason is Tomlin's not the GM. This is not a Belichick situation where he's the coach and the GM. Colbert is the guy, if you recall, the GM who came out and said, Roethlisberger, these guys should learn from Roethlisberger. Colbert's the guy who didn't want to pay Antonio Brown again when his guaranteed money ran out, and who wanted to negotiate and play hardball with Le'Veon Bell, which is understandable. That's how you're supposed to treat running backs. But there is a consequence. Something like this could happen. And so if Brown is acting up and Le'Veon Bell doesn't show up, that's really on the GM. That's not on the coach. But why is it ultimately on Roethlisberger, Stephen A? What did both guys? First of all, you were sitting here all year talking Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben. He's throwing guys under the bus. He's getting away with it. When are we going to hold him accountable? And then what did Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown say once they were out the door? Who did they point the finger at? They both pointed to Roethlisberger. So what does Roethlisberger do now? Right? Like maybe Bell and Brown are wrong. Maybe Roethlisberger should be privileged in the way he is on that team because he's the quarterback and it's quarterback league, and he's won a couple Super Bowls and they've never been to a Super Bowl. But we will find out now because that team still has a lead wideout, still has a good bell cow back, apparently has everything Roethlisberger needs, a defense and offensive line. Okay, Ben, you ran those two guys off. What you got?
Well, first of all, here's why you're wrong. When you talk about Big Ben Roethlisberger, there's a question. Is he going to be the Steelers quarterback or is he going to retire? When the questions was coming up about Mike Tomlin, there was a question by some, not you, not me, because obviously we feel the way that we feel about Mike Tomlin. But others out there were questioning whether or not Tomlin would remain the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So what you're talking about is the way things should be. I'm talking about the way things are. In the end, when you consider that level of dysfunctionality that raked through that franchise this last season, if that were to happen again, Big Ben Roethlisberger would still be the quarterback going into 2020. But I'm not sure Tomlin would be the head coach. And I think it would be unfair, but nevertheless, that is reality.
Well, they don't have a backup quarterback. That's what happens.
I'm just saying.
You can find another head coach. Go find a quarterback.
But that's the reality. You can find another head coach.
Certainly don't have a lot of changeover in terms of that
Of
organization.
course, there are 3 head coaches in the franchise history.
Big Ben.